Okay, so now I'll start my actual code. The first thing I have to do is import my text data file that I just created. So this is the same as always. So I'm going to open the data file for reading as F. And now I'm going to basically go through and split that data set up into feature data and target data for learning. So I'm going to read in the file and then split that data set up into individual lines or entries. I'm going to use the split lines function. And I'm going to pop off the first entry because in our case, the first entry, if you look at it in the text editor, it's actually the header. So we don't want that to come in as data. Okay, so now we have every entry on a separate line, and we're going to create two arrays to contain our feature data and our target data. So I'm going to create an array called feature data, set that to an empty array, and create an array called target data, and set that to an empty array. We're creating empty arrays because we're going to add to them iteratively as we scan through the data. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is actually shuffle my data. I'm going to use the random.shuffle function and feed in my entries. And this will take in any list of data and then in place shuffle all those values. And the reason I'm doing this is because right now my data is organized according to price. And when we start to split the data sets into training and validation sets, it's important to shuffle it first so you don't only capture one type of data in the training set and another type of data in the validation set. So we're going to just shuffle that data right away, right as before we read it in. So now I'm going to loop through each entry in my entries array. And to keep this problem small starting out, similarly to how we did with the graph example, I'm going to create just a subset of entries. So I'm just going to read in the first 1,000 entries. So as we're testing our algorithms, we don't have to deal with all of the entries all at once. And this is syntax we saw from last week. Basically the colon and number specifies that we're going to take from 0 to this number of entries. So this is the first 1,000 entries. Okay, and then for those entries, I'm going to first split each entry by the semicolon. It's going to give me every column. And then I'm going to append to both my feature data and target data arrays the actual data that I'm going to be looking at. So in our case, if you remember, the feature data is the latitude longitude, that's 1 and 2 in the array. And our target value is the 0, the price, the first entry in the array. Okay, so for feature data, I'm going to append data 1 and data 2. And you see here I'm putting it in brackets, square brackets. Each feature data, each part of that array is going to be its own array of 2 values. Okay, and this is the kind of standard format we're going to use for training sets. Okay, and then in my target data array, I'm just going to read in the first entry in each data point, and that's just going to be a straight array. Okay, so remember the feature data tends to be 2-dimensional arrays, so one dimension is all the entries and the other dimension is all the features. For the target, you have only one value for each entry, so you just have a 1-dimensional array. Okay, and just to be safe, I'm going to wrap this all in a try and except structure. It's just like last week, in case there's any part of our data where we don't have all 3 entries, this is going to give us an error if it can't find all 3. Okay. So it's just going to create an exception every time that happens.